In this video, we're going to understand how to sketch quadratic curves. We'll be given two kinds of equations. Two kinds of quadratic equations. One would be in the completed square form, or which is this kind of a form. And the other one can be in a factorized form, which is this kind of a form. Okay, we're going to understand how to sketch our quadratic curves for both of these kinds of equations. Now, for a completed square form, we'll need four things before we can sketch our graph. And what are those four things? One is the turning point, the y-intercept, the x-intercept, and the shape. What do you mean by the turning point? These things have been discussed in the previous video. I'll just recap it over here. The turning point is the minimum point or the maximum point of a quadratic curve. Turning point is also known as the stationary point, something that you need to remember. What do you mean by the y-intercept? The y-intercept is the point where the graph cuts the y-axis, and the x-intercepts are those points where the graph cuts the x-axis. What do you mean by the shape? A quadratic curve can have two kinds of shapes. Okay, it can either be a minima, okay, which is a happy face, or it can be a maxima, which is a sad face. When do we get a minima? We get a minima when the coefficient of x squared is positive, and when do we get a maxima? When the coefficient of x squared is negative. Okay. Keeping these things in mind, we're going to attempt this question over here. I have y equals to 2x minus 2 whole square plus 3. And the first thing that I had to do was to find the turning point. In order to find the turning point, you're going to take the value inside the bracket equals to 0. Remember, a turning point has two coordinates. It has the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So you have to find both of these coordinates to complete the turning point. Okay. So you'll take the value inside the bracket equals to 0. So you take x minus 2 equals to 0. So the value of x comes as 2. So the x coordinate for the turning point is 2. Now, how do you find the y coordinate? Whatever is getting added, whichever number is getting added or subtracted outside the bracket, whichever number is getting added or subtracted outside the bracket is your y coordinate of the turning point. So over here, 3 is getting added. So my y coordinate of the turning point would be 3. So the turning point becomes 2, 3. The next thing that I have to do is find the y-intercept. Okay. For the y-intercept, I need to remember that the value of x equals to 0. I'll take this equation, I'll take x as 0 to find out the y-intercept. So y would be equal to 2, 0 minus 2 whole square plus 3. This will become 2 minus 2 squared plus 3. This will be 4. 4 into 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 equals to 11. So you got the value of the y-intercept, which is equal to 11. So your coordinates would be 0, 11. Remember that the y-intercept lies on the y-axis, and the y-axis, your value of x is 0. Okay. So you got the y-intercept as 0, 11. Let's talk about the x-intercepts. Okay. For the x-intercepts, you know that y would be taken as 0 because these x-intercepts, they lie on the x-axis. So if I take y as 0, I'm going to get 0 equals to 2x minus 2 whole square plus 3. X minus 2 whole square plus 3. I'll make x minus 2 whole square the subset. So I'll get x minus 2 whole square equals to minus 3 upon 2. If I take under root on both the sides, so I'll get x minus 2 because under root and square will get cancelled. And on this side, I'm going to get under root minus 3 upon 2. If you try to solve under root minus 3 upon 2, you won't get a solution. Okay. Then calculator will give you a math error. Please don't write math error. You just write no solution. And that means that you will not get any x-intercepts. Okay. Then the curve will not intersect the x-axis. The last thing that I need to figure out is the shape of my quadratic curve. Okay. For the shape, you need to figure out the coefficient of x squared. I'll just copy paste the equation over here and we'll try to figure out the coefficient of x squared. If you look over here, if you expand this bracket, so you'll get x squared, you'll get positive x squared, and this positive x squared will get multiplied by positive 2 to make positive 2x squared. Remember that you don't have to actually expand this. You just need to think and use your brain a little bit and figure out कि x square का coefficient क्या होगा. सही है? So x square coefficient जो होगा, that would be positive 2. Okay, because if I take this outside, if I expand this bracket, I'm going to get x square, and this x square, positive x square, will get multiplied by positive 2 to make positive 2x squared. So coefficient x square is positive. Therefore, I'll get a minima. So the shape of the quadratic curve would be this. Okay. Now let's write all of these things over here. Remember, my y-intercept is 0, 11. My turning point is 2, 3. So yeah, so we can take steps of 3 just to make this graph a little simpler. So this would be 3, 6, 9, and 12. Okay, and this would become 2, 2, and this would be 4. My turning point is 2, 3. So turning point would come over here, 2, 3. It's my turning point. So I'll write 2, 3 over here. My y-intercept is 0, 11. So I'll write 0, 11 over here. So this is my y-intercept. Okay. Now what do you need to do? You need to connect your y-intercept with the turning point. Okay. Just try not to make a mountain over here. ठीक है? क्योंकि पहाड़ नहीं चाहिए examiner को. आप scale से नहीं बनाएंगे, आप free hand बनाएंगे. Okay. So you connect this y-intercept with your turning point and make one side of the curve. If you remember, one thing that we discussed in the previous video, that the parabola is symmetric about the center, which means that this side would be exactly equal to this side. It's just be the image of it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll approximately make the image of the left-hand side. Okay. The image of the left-hand side, which is somewhat like this. That's it. That's what you have to do. One thing that you need to remember whenever making a quadratic curve is that these lines cannot bend towards this side. This cannot bend towards this side, or this cannot bend towards this side. That would be incorrect. Okay. And you cannot make mountains, which means that you cannot directly make it like this. That would be absolutely wrong. You cannot do that. Okay. And please don't use a scale. You have to make this freehand using a pencil. Okay. So this is my quadratic graph. This is what I had to do. Let's take another example. Okay. Before doing an example, there's a question. It's saying, find the minimum value of y and the corresponding value of x. Okay. For this graph, it's asking me to find the minimum value of y and the corresponding value of x. Just remember, for all these questions in which the examiner is asking you to find out the minimum value of y, the minimum value of y would be the y coordinate of the turning point. And why is that? If you think the lowest value of y that you're going to get would be this 3, because you're not going any lower than this point, right? You're not going lower than this point. So the least value of y that you're going to get would be 3. Okay. So you're going to write that the minimum value of y, minimum or least value of y equals to 3. And you also need to give the corresponding value of x, and the corresponding value of x would be the x coordinate of the turning point, because you need to give that value of x at which you got the least value of y. So yes, you got the least value of y as 3. What was the corresponding value of x when you got the value of y as 3? And that was 2, the x coordinate of the turning point. We'll just write the corresponding value of x. Corresponding value of x. Value of x would be equal to 2. Now let's look at another question. Again, this equation over here is in the completed square form. To sketch a curve, whenever we have a quadratic equation in the completed square form, you need to find 4 things. One is the turning point. Okay. The other one is the y-intercept, then the x-intercept, and the last one is the shape. Okay, how are we going to find the turning point? The value inside the bracket. The value inside the bracket has to be taken as 0. So I have x plus 2. I'll take x plus 2 equals to 0. So I'm going to get x equals to minus 2. Now, for y, the y coordinate of the turning point, whichever value is just getting added or subtracted outside the bracket is this value 4. This is getting subtracted. Okay, so I'll get my value of the y coordinate of the turning point would be positive 4. Okay, this is positive 4, and this would be the y coordinate of the turning point. So my coordinates of the turning point come out as -2, 4. Once I get the coordinates of the turning point, I need to find the y-intercept. Remember, for the y-intercept, you need to take the value of x as 0. So I'll take x as 0. I'm going to get y equals to 4 minus 0 plus 2 whole square. So the value of the y-intercept comes out as 0. Okay, so my coordinates would be 0, 0. Remember, the y-intercept lies on the y-axis. At the y-axis, the x coordinate is already 0. So yes, so your y coordinate was 0, so this becomes 0, 0. Now for the x-intercept, we're going to take the value of y as 0. Now to find the x-intercepts, we'll take y as 0. So if we take y as 0, we're going to get 0 equals to 4 minus x plus 2 whole square. 4 minus x plus 2 whole squared. Okay. And if I make x plus 2 whole squared the subject, I'm going to get x plus 2 whole squared equals to 4. I'm going to take under root on both the sides. And remember, whenever you take square root, you get plus minus on one side. So मेरे पास हो जाएगा x plus 2 equals to plus minus 2. Okay. So you get two values of x, one with plus 2 and the other one with minus 2. So if I have x plus 2 equals to plus 2, so this will become plus 2 minus 2, which would be 0. And x plus 2 equals to minus 2, that would be minus 2 minus 2, which is equal to minus 4. So you're getting the x-intercepts as 0 and minus 4. Okay. So I'll write, oh sorry, the last thing that is left is the shape. What would be the shape of the quadratic curve? Okay. So for this, I need to write the equation over here. Now, if you look that your coefficient of x squared, if it comes out of this bracket, would be positive, but if it multiplies with this negative sign, that will become negative. Since the coefficient of x squared becomes negative, my shape would be a maxima. Okay? When the coefficient of x squared is negative, my shape becomes a maxima. Maxima is a sad face. Okay? So that is what we are going to get over here. We'll mention all of these x-intercepts and y-intercepts. My x-intercepts were 0, minus 4, 0, and minus 4. And y-intercept was 0, 0. The turning point was minus 2 and 4. Minus 2. And let's have 4 over here. So I'll have the turning point as minus 2 and 4. What's the first thing that we do? We connect the turning point with the y-intercept. Remember, it's a maxima. Maxima is this kind of a shape, okay? So for the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to connect the turning point with the y-intercept. Your y-intercept was 0, okay? So connect the turning point with the y-intercept. You're going to get one part of the curve, okay? So I got one part of the curve. Remember, it's a quadratic curve, it's a parabola. Parabolas are symmetric about the center. So if you have to make the other part of the curve would be the exact image of this part. Okay. So going to make the other part of the curve by making the image of the right hand side, which is, sorry, somewhat like this. It's not a proper shape, but yeah, that's fair. Okay. So once I'm done with my graph, I can now mention my x-intercepts because that just makes it easier. So this is 0, this is minus 2, and this would be minus 4. So my x-intercepts are minus 4 and 0. So yeah, and I have mentioned them over here once I have completed my graph. Okay. Over here, the examiner is asking me to find the maximum value of y and the corresponding value of x. Again, for all of these questions, remember that the maximum value of y would be the y coordinate of the turning point, and the corresponding value of x would be the x coordinate of the turning point. Okay, there's a reason for that. You cannot go beyond this point. Okay, over here, the value of y is 4. So that becomes the maximum value of y. So yeah, the value of y that you get, the value of x, so which to get this value of y would be the corresponding value of x, which is minus 2. Okay. So my maximum value of y is the y coordinate of the turning point, which is 4. Max value of y is 4, and the corresponding value of x is equals to -2, right? Yeah, it is -2. Okay, now we're going to move on to the sketching of quadratic curves when we have a quadratic equation in the factorized form. Okay, remember one thing, that when you have a quadratic equation in the factorized form, like in this form, you have to do the exact same thing. You have to find the turning point, the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, and the shape. लेकिन यहाँ जो equation है, that is not in the completed square form. तो turning point कैसे निकालें? अच्छा, turning point के लिए ना, we're going to make use of the x-intercepts. The x coordinate of the turning point is exactly in between the x-intercepts. ठीक है, हम लोग इस चीज को ऊपर से भी observe कर सकते हैं. When we were sketching the curves of the quadratic equation in completed square form, our x coordinate of the turning point, the x coordinate of the turning point was exactly in between the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are 0 and -1. ठीक है, the x coordinate of the turning point is -2, which is exactly in between these two. तो हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं? What we can do is we can find out the x-intercepts first, ठीक है? Then we can use those x-intercepts to find out the coordinates of the turning point. ठीक है, देखते हैं क्या करना है. पहले x-intercept निकालते हैं. The x-intercept would be, एक minute, let's use the color. The x-intercepts would be, if I take y as 0, so I'm going to get the x-intercepts as 1 and -2. ठीक है, the y-intercept, the y-intercept would be, if I take x as 0, I'm going to get -1 plus 2. -1 will get multiplied by +2, so -1 into 2 becomes -2. So the y-intercept is -2. Now I have to find out the coordinates of the turning point. Remember that the x coordinate of the turning point is exactly in between the two x-intercepts. ठीक है, तो अगर मुझे x coordinate निकालना है, उसके लिए मैं क्या करूँ? X coordinate turning point के x coordinate के लिए I'm going to add both of them. ठीक है, 1 plus -2, and I'm going to divide this by 2 to find out the center, to get in between the two x-intercepts. ठीक है, तो मेरे पास आ जाएगा 1 minus 2 divided by 2, so that becomes -half. Okay, so that is the x coordinate of the turning point. Now, if I have to find out the y coordinate of the turning point, I have to go plug in this value of x back into my main equation. So मेरे पास जो y coordinate हो जाएगा, that would be -half -1 -half plus 2. You can use a calculator to find out the y coordinate of the turning point. So -half -1 is -1.5, and -half plus 2 is +1.5. That becomes -9/4. So your coordinates of the turning point come out as -half and -9/4. ठीक है, तो अब क्या करें? x-intercepts आ गए, y-intercept आ गए, turning point coordinates भी आ गए. The last thing that we have to find out is the shape. Okay, and how we're going to find out the shape? Shape के लिए अगर आपको याद हो तो हम लोग क्या करते थे? Coefficient of x square देखते थे. ठीक है, you don't need to multiply the equation to find out the coefficient of x square. You just need to multiply x with x. ठीक है, अगर मैं x को x से multiply करके देखूं तो मेरे पास क्या आएगा? I'll just get x square, और उसका coefficient क्या है? उसका coefficient is +1. ठीक है, so the coefficient of x square is +1. My graph would be a minima. ठीक है, तो ग्राफ मुझे पता है मिनिमा हो गया. उसके टर्निंग पॉइंट के कोऑर्डिनेट्स -half और -9/4 आ रहे हैं. -half -9/4, I have this as minus, let's take this as -1, this is -2. ठीक है, तो -9/4 क्या होता है? -9/4 is -2.25. So -half and -2.25 would be somewhat over here. ठीक है, your x-intercepts are 1 and -2. 1 and -2 x-intercepts हो गए हैं. ठीक है, ये मेरे x-intercepts हैं, and my y-intercept is -2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the turning point with my y-intercept and the x-intercepts. ठीक है, तो मैं अपने turning point को मैं अपने y-intercept और x-intercept से connect करूंगा to get one part of the quadratic curve. So yeah, तो ये मेरे पास एक part आ गया. दूसरा part क्या होगा? दूसरा part would be the exact image of this side. ठीक है, और मैं कैसे निकाल सकता हूँ? मैं इसको इसके साथ ऐसे connect कर दूं such that this part is the exact image of this part. Okay, तो इसको कनेक्ट कर देते हैं ऐसे। Yep. ठीक है, so I got my quadratic curve. It's a little crooked from this side. हाँ, कुछ ऐसा होना चाहिए। Yeah, this is better. Okay, so I got my quadratic curve. So yeah, so you have this as your turning point. These are your X-intercepts. This is your Y-intercept, and you have a minimum. That's how you need to sketch your curve, quadratic curve, when you have a quadratic equation in a factorized form. So yeah, अब एक सवाल आता है, सवाल ये आता है कि यार अगर आपके पास मॉड्यूलस फंक्शन होता तो उसका ग्राफ कैसा बनता। ठीक है, if you had a modulus function, for example mod of x minus 1 x plus 2, mod of x minus 1 x plus 2, तो उसका ग्राफ कैसा बनता है। उसका ग्राफ ना, तो इसमें से एक चीज याद रखिएगा, that this curve cannot have negative values of I because you have a mod. Since you cannot have negative values of I, this portion which is below the x-axis would get reflected above the x-axis. Okay, we're going to discuss this in the next video. Okay, and that's it for today's video. Okay, love us, take care.